Okay, guys, so we've got beginning of Unit 4, starting with the Cold War. And just like World War II, I really like the Cold War. I really like how things are, tussling, going back and forth. Um, so let's get right in it. First quiz, there's 3 quizzes in 4.1. This first quiz is all about communism versus capitalism. So I'll do a quick rundown of each of them in case you don't remember or don't know. Capitalism is a economic theory where uh, people, the market will be controlled by the people who have the businesses, and they control what they make, and people control what they buy because they that's their spending habits. And basically capitalism is a very government hands-off approach where the government doesn't tell you what you have to make and what you have to buy. Communism is kind of the opposite. Businesses are controlled by the government, and um, you don't get to decide what you're going to make in your company or what you can buy. If the government doesn't want you to buy it, then well, you're not going to buy it. So pros of capitalism is it's, I guess, more fair. Communism is more equal. So capitalism will definitely support people who are going to work hard for their money, causing and the individual. And communism is more for like everybody, as opposed to the common working man. And it gives programs to help people be able to survive. Nobody basically is poor, but nobody is rich. So communism, everybody's equal. So those kind of the differences. So basically, all of the Cold War is, for the most part, about is this power struggle between the top capitalist country, the US, and the top communist country, the Soviet Union. They are the best at what they do, and they don't like each other's systems, which is not hard to believe because they're pretty much opposites. So basically, after Germany surrendered, you have a conference together where Soviet Union, Great Britain, and U.S. got together. They had it. It's called the Potsdam Conference, and the U.S. and Soviet Union had their different goals of what they wanted. They both wanted their system in Germany. So that's the other map I was gonna show you guys. When Germany was split up into different sections after World War II. Okay, after World War II, the Allied powers basically separated Germany into different sections and decided who's going to basically control the sections. Their main goal was keep Germany from having power anymore. They wanted to, reduce their industry and have them pay Soviet Union back for damages done. So we've got Soviet Union controls here, Great Britain, France, and US. Okay. So capital is Berlin. Berlin is also separated similarly. Here is Berlin. So there's West Berlin, which is controlled by these collectively 3 countries for the most part, and East Berlin, which is controlled by the Soviet Union. And so they both wanted to institute in Germany the U.S. wanted capitalist types of economies and government, democratic government, and Soviet Union wanted communism and more dictatorship, authoritative government. So they had different plans for Germany. Poland, which is right here next to Germany, they actually got a little bit more. So their border used to be back here. They got a little bit more cutting into Berlin, but Russia or Soviet Union cut into Poland a little bit over there. So that's something that happened with Poland. The U.S. wanted Soviet Union to join with them in the war against Japan because that was still going on when this conference was going on. But they knew that they had the atom bomb when they had this conference, but the president basically decided not to share this information with Stalin because, well, they're kind of frenemies at this point. So they're not going to just tell them all their secrets. Definitely not. Okay, so the atomic bomb, nothing wrong there. we bombed Japan 2 times, once on August 6th and then next time on August 9th, 3 days apart. And a lot of people do not like the fact that we bombed them. Understandably why, because a lot of civilians were killed. They targeted cities specifically to kill a lot of people, to have a great damage, not because they liked killing people, of course, but because they wanted to get a good, quick, maximum damage done and then have Japan surrender. They actually wanted to use the atom bomb as like a, hey, if you don't surrender now, we have destructive things that are gonna come. So surrender. And Japan's like, no way. And they kept going. So one reason why one reason people think that the president actually decided to drop the bombs on Japan was that he was kind of flexing his muscles just to show Soviet Union what we were capable of. So that they wouldn't, try anything with us. And I think that kind of worked, because there were several instances at the beginning of the Cold War, and we'll talk about those, that we could have, that they could have fought against us and had a small war. And if we would have used the bomb on them, then they would have been decimated. I think that it did save lots of little wars from happening in the Cold War. So yeah, that's one theory that I have. So the reason why it's only the US and the Soviet Union at this point who are really vying for power is because all of the other huge world powers that used to be world powers, they weren't so much world powers. They were still trying to recover for World War II. We didn't really get hit because, obviously we're not in Europe. So all the other European powers, they didn't have any, they couldn't, do anything. They were just trying to recover themselves. So it was just us. The world's powerful nations after World War II got together and they created the United Nations. The goal of the United Nations was to create no more wars, especially not any more world wars. They wanted to mitigate and try to create peace before wars would ever happen. That was basically the goal of the UN. So most of the UN powers, countries, they supported capitalism. Only a few of them actually supported communism at the beginning, especially Soviets. So, there was a lot of talks that happened to rebuild Europe's economy, and the Soviet Union was like, "No, we don't like it." But they participated in talking, but they didn't actually, agree to do anything. Let's see. Stalin in 1946, he said to his people, he's like, communism and capitalism cannot work together. He said that in a world, there's no way that those two are capable of being in the same world together. Obviously, we have proven that false, because there are still communistic governments in the world, and they're still existing and we're still existing, but there still is a huge struggle. I think there will always be a struggle between capitalism and communism because they're opposites. So once our kind of negotiator, I guess, if you will, I can't really think of the word, that is working in Soviet Union, once he heard Stalin say that to his people, he was like, hey, US, they don't think that we can exist at the same time. This isn't a good sign. And so it kind of made us a little bit nervous. Both are all of the countries of Britain and France and the US, they wanted something called an Iron Curtain, which is basically like a border around the Soviet-controlled countries in the world. So right here, this would basically be the Iron Curtain. These are all of the countries that were controlled or supported by the Soviet Union, and these are all the countries that were supported by the UN, or capitalist countries. So because they kind of officially declared that this be an Iron Curtain, they didn't want it to extend any further, and that they would try to do anything they could to try to prevent it from extending any further to the west. Soviet Union is like, well, this is a call to war, be on your guard kind of thing. So they didn't like that. So I'm going to show you guys some Cold War hotspots where basically there's a lot of tensions going on. So we have Iran here. They were the home of oil, and Saudi Arabia, but Iran most of the part. The Soviets were mostly wanting to get in there, but they were threatened, said back down, and they did. Greece, they were really worried about Greece because they basically thought that if Soviets get into Greece, there was, people who were trying to overthrow the government. And so we're worried about if they get Greece, then they'll get Turkey, which is super important because right here, there's that little canal. And that is Soviet Union's only way to get to the ocean and for its market. So if they can't control that canal, they can't ship any goods to anybody. So it's super important to them. So they don't like that. They want to get Turkey, control of Turkey. And luckily for us, they were allies of us. So yay, that's good for us, I guess. So what we have is President Truman. He has something that he calls the Truman Doctrine, where he wants, this is his theory of containment, holding the Iron Curtain very still. Oh, not that one. Making sure that, we contain them. This is the practice of containment. We're going to contain them. We're going to keep them in there. Okay. We want to keep them in there. He also has this idea of a Marshall Plan, where basically any of these countries or other countries that are wanting to be capitalist and democratic, we're going to give you money. You're struggling from World War II. Hey, if you want to be capitalist, we'll give you money. That's basically the Marshall Plan. And Soviet Union saw that and it was like, well, we're going to do the same thing and call it the Molotov Plan. And so they did the same thing and gave money to people who wanted to rebuild, but also wanted more of a communist type of government. We're going to talk about right here. So here in Berlin, we have, this is deep inside of Soviet territory. As you see, Berlin is right here. Okay. So this is inside of Soviet territory. So whenever, and half of Berlin is controlled by these countries, right? So when they're getting goods and supplies to their people, they usually take trucks across Soviet-controlled east of Germany to get to Berlin. But Soviet Union was not happy because the European powers, these guys on the left side, they were talking about forming a common currency, and Stalin's like, no, you can't do that. So he basically blocks off all the roads so they can't get supplies in. And so President Truman has a great idea, I think, and it's called the Berlin Airlift. What this is basically they put lots of supplies onto planes, as you can see in this picture. They're putting on lots of planes, and they fly the planes over Soviet-controlled Germany, because they can't drive their trucks there anymore. So they fly over and they drop. They drop these supplies over into the west side of Berlin, and people don't starve to death. And this lasted several months, and then finally Stalin gave up and was like, all right, fine, you win. I'll reopen the roads again. So this is just the beginning of the Cold War. Okay, there hasn't been a lot of action going on, even though this was a actionless war for the most part. But like they're starting to test each other. The main thing that you need to know for this unit is there's capitalism and communism, and they're just trying to get a better edge over each other. Okay, that's what they're doing. Everything that they do is to get a better edge over the other person and get more people to join their side, convince less people to go to the other side, and that is their main goal. So that's the end of this first quiz of 4.1.